There's a particular loneliness that comes with running from your past, and an even deeper one when you stop running but can't go home. This is a story about a man who thought isolation was freedom, until an act of simple decency bound him to people he never expected to need, and who needed him right back. It's about what happens when honor traps you, and how sometimes the trap is exactly where you were meant to be all along. Caleb Stone saw the dust first. 2 riders, maybe 3 miles out, coming from the direction of town. His hand went to the rifle in its scabbard before he thought about it, then stopped. He squinted against the morning sun, watching the distant figures move along the valley floor below his fence line. They weren't riding toward his ranch, just passing through. He breathed out slow. His Morgan gelding shifted beneath him, picking up the tension. 6 years he'd been out here. 6 years since he'd killed that marshal and run. 6 years checking every horizon for men with badges and hard questions. The riders disappeared behind a stand of cottonwoods. Caleb sat there another 5 minutes, making sure they stayed gone. When the dust settled, he turned his horse back toward the fence line. His hands were shaking. He gripped the reins tighter so he wouldn't have to see it. The wanted poster in his saddlebag crinkled as the Morgan moved. He never looked at it anymore. Didn't need to. He knew his own face. If you're watching this story unfold from somewhere quiet, where the past sometimes feels closer than the future, I'd love to know where you're joining me from. Drop a comment below. Sometimes it's good to know we're not alone in the listening. The fence line ran another 8 miles north before it hit the canyon rim. Caleb worked his way along it, checking each mortise and tenon joint he'd set 6 months back. His hands moved without thinking, testing, tightening, moving on. The Morgan stopped when he stopped, walked when he walked. They'd done this route 50 times, maybe more. A cottontail bolted from the sage. The Morgan's ears flicked forward, but he didn't spook. Good horse. Caleb had bought him off a widow in town 3 years back for $30 and a side of beef. Best money he'd spent. "Easy, old man," Caleb said. His voice sounded strange, rough. When was the last time he'd used it for more than talking to the horse? 2 weeks, 3. The sun climbed higher. Sweat started under his hat brim, ran down his temple. He wiped it with his sleeve. The nearest neighbor was 15 miles south, a sheep rancher named Garrett, who'd invited him to a church social last month. Caleb hadn't gone. Garrett hadn't asked twice. The fence held solid. Every post plumb, every rail fitted tight. Good work. His work. All of it done alone. By noon, he'd reached the north section. The spring bubbled up here between 2 red rocks, cold water trickling into a stone basin he'd dug out and lined. He dismounted, let the Morgan drink first, then knelt and cupped water to his mouth. It tasted like iron and earth. He sat back on his heels, looking out over the canyon. Miles of nothing. Juniper and sage, red rock. Blue sky so hard it hurt to look at. No smoke, no dust, no sound except wind and the spring's trickle and a raven calling somewhere distant. Beautiful, empty. He stood, brushed the dirt off his knees. The Morgan had wandered a few feet away, cropping at the sparse grass near the basin. Caleb watched him. A good horse didn't need much. Food, water, work, simple. His hand went to the saddlebag without thinking. The wanted poster crinkled under his palm. He jerked his hand back like he'd touched a hot stove. The raven called again, closer this time. Caleb turned. The bird sat on a juniper branch 20 feet away, black against the blue, watching him with one eye. It opened its beak, called once more. The sound bounced off the canyon walls, came back doubled, like an answer to a question he hadn't asked. Then he saw her. Down by the spring, 20 feet from where he stood, kneeling at the water's edge, her back to him. The raven launched off the juniper and winged away south, over the canyon rim. Caleb watched it go. Then he saw the movement. Down by the spring, 20 feet from where he stood, a woman knelt at the water's edge, her back to him. Doeskin dress, beaded across the shoulders. Her hair hung in a single braid down her spine. Black as the raven's wing, she had a leather bag beside her and held something in her hands, a root. Dirt still clinging to it. She bent forward, rinsed it in the basin. Caleb's hand dropped to his rifle, stopped. She hadn't turned, hadn't moved except to wash the root. Her digging stick lay on the ground next to the bag, smooth antler handle, fire-hardened point. The Morgan saw her. His ears came forward. He took 2 steps toward her. She turned. Her face showed nothing. No surprise, no fear. Dark eyes met his and held steady. She looked maybe 30, maybe younger. Hard to tell. The beadwork on her dress was simple, geometric patterns, white and blue on the natural hide. Working clothes, not ceremony. Didn't mean to startle you, Caleb said. She stood. The root dropped into her bag. Her hands stayed visible, relaxed. You did not startle me. I heard your horse before I saw you. Her English surprised him more than finding her here. Good English. Clear. Just a slight thickness to some of the consonants. This is your spring, she asked. My land? Yeah. She nodded, picked up her bag. I apologize. I did not know. I was searching for osha root, for my grandmother's cough. Caleb looked at the bag, half full. Find what you needed. Some, not enough. She lifted the digging stick. The canyon all looks the same. I thought I knew the way back, but... She gestured at the maze of red rock around them. I turned around somewhere. The sun sat 3 fingers above the western rim. Maybe 2 hours of good light left. Less in the canyon bottoms where shadow pooled early. Where's your camp? Caleb asked. East, past the 3-peaked ridge. She pointed. But from here you couldn't see any ridge. Just canyon walls and sky. That's 8 miles, maybe 10 the way the canyons run. She looked at the sun. Her jaw tightened, just barely. I should not be out after dark. It would not be proper. Caleb walked to the Morgan, pulled the canteen, drank. The water was warm now, tasted like metal and old leather. He capped it, hung it back on the saddle horn. I can guide you to the ridge, he said. You'll see the valley from there. She studied him. Those dark eyes didn't blink. You would do this, just being decent. She seemed to consider it. Then yes, thank you. My name is Ayasha. Caleb. She moved to the Morgan, looked up at him, then at Caleb. I can walk. 8 miles, sun'll be down before you make it halfway. He swung up into the saddle, held his hand down. Come on. Her hand was smaller than his, but calloused, strong. She pulled herself up behind him, settled onto the Morgan's rump. Her bag hung from her shoulder. The digging stick she held across her lap. Hold on to my shoulder, Caleb said. He's steady, but the rocks get tricky. Her hand touched his left shoulder. Light, barely there. He turned the Morgan east. Following the canyon bottom, the horse picked his way between the sage and scattered rock. The sun dropped another finger width. Shadow started climbing the eastern wall. They didn't talk, just the sound of the Morgan's hooves on stone. The creak of saddle leather, wind moving through the juniper. Her hand stayed on his shoulder. He could feel the warmth of it through his shirt. The canyon branched. He took the left fork. It narrowed, walls rising steep on both sides. Up ahead the path climbed, switchbacking toward the rim. The Morgan leaned into it, breathing harder. Ayesha's hand gripped tighter as the trail tilted. The sun touched the rim. Red light spilled across the rocks, turned everything the color of old blood. Then it was gone. Not sunset yet, but the canyon swallowed light fast once the sun dropped behind the western wall. "How much farther?" Ayesha asked. First words in 20 minutes. "Another 2 hours to the ridge. Maybe 3 in this dark." Her hand tensed on his shoulder. "It will be full dark before then." "Yeah." Silence. The Morgan's breathing, hooves scraping rock. "I cannot arrive in darkness," she said. Her voice had changed. Not scared. Something else. Formal. Careful. "It would not be appropriate. I am a widow. If I am seen returning with a man after dark, it—" She stopped. The elders would have questions. Caleb pulled the Morgan to a halt, turned his head to look back at her. What kind of questions? About propriety, about protection, about— She met his eyes. Old laws. What laws? It does not matter. "I should not have—" She started to slide off the horse. Caleb caught her wrist. "Wait, just tell me, what laws—" She pulled her hand back. He let go. She stayed on the horse, but wouldn't look at him now. "Among my people. If a man shelters a widow through the night, if he offers protection when she has no male kin to speak for her—" She shook her head. "You do not need to know this. Tell me anyway." Her eyes came back to his, hard, direct. "The custom of our band says he becomes bound to her, as protector, as husband. It is how we honor those who help the vulnerable." The words hung in the air between them. The Morgan shifted his weight, blew hard through his nostrils. Caleb looked east. The path ahead disappeared into shadow. Looked west. The way back was already dark, and getting darker. "We can camp here," he said. "Wait for moonrise. I'll stay on one side of the fire. You stay on the other. Nobody's sheltering anybody. The custom does not care about fires or distance, only darkness and protection. That's—" He stopped, stared at her. "You're serious?" "Yes." The last light bled from the sky. Stars began to prick through the blue-black overhead. The Morgan's breathing was the loudest sound in the world. Ayesha's hand touched his shoulder again. "We should keep riding." Caleb looked at the darkness ahead, at the woman behind him, at the stars coming out one by one. He'd spent 6 years avoiding exactly this: connection, obligation, anything that might tie him to another person. And now, because he'd offered a lost woman a ride home, he might be bound to her by customs he didn't understand in ways he couldn't undo. The Morgan took a step forward without being told, then another. Caleb didn't stop him. They rode into the darkness together. They rode in darkness. The Morgan picked his way by starlight and instinct. Hooves finding purchase on stone Caleb couldn't see. Ayesha's hand stayed on his shoulder. Neither spoke. The canyon walls rose black on both sides, cutting off even the stars. Only straight overhead could Caleb see sky. The path climbed, switchbacked, climbed again. The Morgan's breathing came harder, louder in the silence. Caleb leaned forward in the saddle, shifting his weight to help. Ayasha shifted with him, her hand sliding from his shoulder to grip his belt. "Almost there," he said. His voice sounded strange in the dark. "Yes." The trail leveled. The canyon opened up. Stars reappeared, thick across the dome of sky, ahead, maybe a mile distant. Caleb saw the orange flicker of fires. Small, scattered, a camp. "There," Ayasha said. The Morgan smelled the water before Caleb saw it, a creek running silver in the starlight. The horse quickened his pace, head down, making for it. Dogs started barking before they reached the camp's edge. Shadows moved between the fires. Voices called out in a language Caleb didn't know. Ayasha slid off the Morgan before Caleb could help her. She landed light, turned, said something in her language to the people emerging from the darkness. A woman answered. Then a man, older, his voice carrying weight. Caleb dismounted. Let the Morgan drink from the creek. His legs felt stiff from the long ride. His back ached. He stretched, heard his spine crack. More people gathered. Maybe 20. Silent, watching. Firelight caught their faces, left their eyes in shadow. Children peeked from behind their mothers' skirts. Dogs circled, hackles raised, growling low. An old man stepped forward, white braids, face carved deep with lines. He wore a buckskin shirt, beaded across the chest. He looked at Ayasha, spoke. She answered, gesturing at Caleb, at the Morgan, back toward the canyon they'd come from. The old man's eyes moved to Caleb. Stayed there. He said something else. Ayasha responded, her voice quieter now, more talk. Other men joining, elders by the look of them. Ayasha kept her eyes down when they spoke, but her answers came steady, respectful but not meek. Finally, the old man gestured toward one of the hide lodges. Ayasha nodded. She looked at Caleb. They want you to stay until morning. It would be disrespectful to send you away in darkness. I can find my way back. They know. But you are a guest now. You brought me home safely. She paused. Please. It would dishonor them to refuse. Caleb looked at the circle of faces. The old man's expression gave nothing away. All right. Ayasha spoke again. The old man nodded. The crowd began to disperse, people drifting back to their fires. A young woman approached, maybe 16, carrying a wooden bowl. She offered it to Ayasha, who took it, nodded thanks. The girl glanced at Caleb, then away. Quick. There is food, Ayasha said, and a place to sleep. Someone will bring it. She turned to go. Caleb caught her arm. What happens in the morning? The elders will speak with you. She pulled her arm back, gently. Get rest. You will need it. She walked away into the dark, her gathering bag still over her shoulder. Caleb stood there, holding the Morgan's reins, watching her disappear between the lodges. A man approached, young, maybe 25. He wore a cotton shirt, traded goods, over deerskin leggings. I speak English, he said. I will show you where to sleep. I can stay with my horse. No, the women will tend your horse. You will sleep in the guest lodge. Not a request. Caleb followed him through the camp. The lodges were bigger, up close than they'd looked from a distance. Buffalo hide stretched over cottonwood poles. smoke holes at the apex. Cook fires burned outside most of them. Women tended them. Faces turned away as Caleb passed. Children stared openly until their mothers scolded them in low voices. The guest lodge sat at the camp's edge, smaller than the others. The young man pushed aside the hide flap. "Here, someone will bring food." "What's your name?" Caleb asked. "Black Otter." "Thank you, Black Otter." The young man studied him. "The elders will want to speak with you at dawn. Do not leave before then." "Wasn't planning to." Black Otter nodded, left. The hide flap fell closed. Inside, the lodge was dark except for starlight through the smoke hole. Caleb's eyes adjusted. A pile of buffalo robes lay against one wall. The floor was hard-packed earth, swept clean. It smelled like smoke and hide and something sweet sage, maybe, or sweetgrass. He sat on the robes, took off his hat, ran his hand through his hair. It was damp with sweat despite the night's cold. The hide flap lifted. A woman entered, older, carrying a clay bowl and a folded piece of hide. She set the bowl down in front of Caleb, placed the hide beside it, didn't look at him, didn't speak, left as quickly as she'd come. Caleb unfolded the hide. It held 3 ash cakes, still warm, and a piece of dried meat. The bowl was full of something that steamed in the cold air. He lifted it, sniffed. Stew. Venison. He thought. Onions. Something else he couldn't name. He ate. Hadn't realized how hungry he was until the food touched his tongue. The stew was good. Rich. The ash cakes tasted like cornmeal and smoke. He ate all of it, wiped the bowl clean with the last of the cake. After, he lay back on the buffalo robes. They were soft, well-tanned, smelled like the lodge smoke and hide and sweetgrass. He stared up at the smoke hole. Stars turned slow overhead. He could hear voices from the other lodges. Low, rhythmic. A woman singing something. Maybe a lullaby. The creek running, dogs settling down. He thought about Sarah. That had been 10 years back. Schoolteacher in Silver City. Smart. Pretty. He'd courted her for 6 months before he told her what being a lawman's wife would mean. The danger. The moving. The never knowing when he'd come home or if he'd come home. She'd said yes anyway. Then he'd taken that job in the territorial office. Better pay, more prestige. Important work, they'd said. Enforcing the new policies, moving the tribes to their designated lands, keeping the settlers safe. He'd broken the engagement himself. Told Sarah he'd changed his mind. Told her she deserved better. She'd cried. He'd walked away. Because he couldn't look at her and say what his job really meant. Couldn't tell her about the families he'd moved. The children crying as they were loaded into wagons. The old people who'd lived their whole lives on that land, now forced to walk. He'd thought the law was justice. It wasn't. It was just the law. So he'd quit, taken the ranch job, built his fences, lived alone, and thought that was strength. His hands throbbed. He'd gripped the reins too hard on the ride. He flexed his fingers, felt the joints pop. Outside, the woman singing stopped. The camp grew quiet. Just the creek and the wind and somewhere distant a coyote calling. Caleb closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come. He lay there listening to the silence, wondering what the morning would bring, wondering why he hadn't just pointed Ayasha toward the ridge and ridden home. The hide flap lifted. He sat up, reached for his rifle. "It is only me," Ayasha said. She stood in the entrance, backlit by starlight. She held a small bundle. "You should not be here," Caleb said. "I know." She stepped inside anyway, let the flap fall. "I brought salve for your hands. I saw how you held the reins." She knelt beside him, unwrapped the bundle, a clay jar, small, sealed with wax. She opened it. The smell hit him sharp, medicinal, not unpleasant. Pine sap, maybe, something else. "Give me your hand," she said. He hesitated, held it out. She scooped salve onto her fingers, took his hand in both of hers. Her touch was firm, sure. She worked the salve into his palm, his fingers, the raw spots where the rains had rubbed. Her hands were warm. "The elders will speak to you at dawn," she said, working the salve in. "They will ask questions. Answer truthfully. About what? About why you helped me. About who you are." She finished with his right hand, took his left. "About whether you understand what you have done. I gave you a ride. You protected me through darkness." She looked up at him. "That has meaning. You told me the custom. Not just custom, meaning." She went back to his hand. "When my husband died, I had no brothers, no father. My mother was old. I was alone, no protection. The tribe took me in because they are kind, but I am still alone." Caleb watched her work the salve into his palm. Her braid had fallen forward over her shoulder. A few strands had come loose, hung by her face. "I didn't know," he said. "I know." She finished his left hand, wiped her fingers on the hide wrapping, capped the jar. "But the custom does not care what you knew, only what you did." She stood, wrapped the jar, moved toward the entrance. "Ayasha," he said. She stopped, looked back. "What happens if I refuse? If I say I didn't mean to invoke any custom?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Then I carry shame. And you prove yourself a man who helps only when it costs nothing." She left. The hide flap fell closed. Caleb lay back down. His hands tingled where she'd rubbed the salve in. The smell filled the small lodge. Outside, the coyote called again. Closer this time, he stared at the smoke hole, at the stars wheeling overhead, at the darkness between them. What had he done? Dawn came gray and cold. Caleb woke to voices outside the lodge, low and rhythmic. His hands still smelled like the salve pine and something bitter. He sat up, pulled on his boots, settled his hat. His back was stiff from sleeping on the ground, but the buffalo robes had kept him warm. He pushed aside the hide flap, stepped out into morning mist rising from the creek. The camp was already moving. Women tending fires, children running between lodges, dogs nosing through the grass. The smell of cooking meat hung in the air. His stomach growled. Black Otter appeared from the mist. "The elders are ready." Caleb followed him through the camp. People watched as he passed but didn't speak. A child pointed, and her mother pulled her hand down, whispered something sharp. The girl's eyes went wide. The council lodge was the largest. Set at the camp center, smoke rose from its peak. Black Otter held the flap open. Caleb ducked inside. 4 old men sat in a circle around a small fire. The eldest wore his white braids loose over his shoulders. His face looked carved from the same red stone as the canyon walls. The others flanked him, each wearing buckskin decorated with quillwork and beads. A pipe lay on a buffalo robe between them, the stem pointing east. Ayasha knelt to one side, hands folded in her lap. She didn't look up when Caleb entered. The eldest gestured to an empty place across the fire. Caleb sat. The hide lodge was warm from the fire, smoky. Light came through the smoke hole above, a shaft of gray morning. The eldest spoke. His voice was quiet but carried weight. Black Otter, standing near the entrance, translated. You are Caleb Stone. You ranch 8 miles west. Yes. You brought Ayasha home in the darkness. She was lost. I showed her the way. The eldest said something else. Black Otter hesitated before translating. Why did you not leave her at the ridge? Why bring her all the way to camp? Caleb looked at Ayasha. She kept her eyes down. It was dark. The path was dangerous. I wasn't going to leave her to walk alone. The elders conferred, voices low, measured. The second eldest, his face scarred across one cheek, spoke up. Black Otter translated, You are not married. No. No children. No. You live alone. Yes. More discussion. The third elder leaned forward, firelight catching his eyes. Through Black Otter, Do you know our custom? She told me some of it. Repeat it. Caleb's jaw tightened. She said if a man shelters a widow through darkness, he becomes bound to her, as protector, as husband. This is the custom of our band, the eldest said through Black Otter. Not all tribes follow it, but we hold to the old ways more strictly than most. It protects women who have no male kin. It ensures they are not alone, not vulnerable. Do you understand? I understand what it's for. But I didn't know about it when The custom does not require knowledge, only action. The eldest paused. You acted. Now we must know, are you worthy? Caleb's hands curled into fists on his knees. I didn't come here to marry anybody. And yet you did come here. You protected her. Among our people. This creates obligation not because of rigid law, but because of honor and social trust. When a man shows such care, he must prove he can continue to give it. The eldest gestured to the other men. We offer you trials, 3 moons. Prove you can provide, protect, honor our ways. If you complete them, the union is recognized by all. If you refuse, or if you fail, Ayasha's standing in the tribe is diminished. She will be seen as one who could not hold even a stranger's commitment. Caleb looked at Ayasha again. She sat perfectly still, face composed, but her hands were white-knuckled in her lap. And if I just leave, Caleb asked, ride out now. Black Otter didn't translate immediately. The eldest had understood. He spoke directly, and though Caleb didn't know the words, he caught the tone. Disappointment. When Black Otter translated, his voice was flat. Then you prove yourself a man who helps only when it costs nothing, and Ayasha will carry that shame. She will never remarry, never have children. She will be the woman who was too burdensome for even a passing stranger to honor. The words landed like stones. Caleb stared at the fire, watched it crackle and spit, thought about riding back to his ranch, his empty cabin, his silence, thought about Sarah, 10 years ago, crying when he'd told her he'd changed his mind, thought about the Cheyenne families he'd moved, the children crying, the law that wasn't justice. He looked up, met the eldest's eyes. I won't dishonor her. I'll do your trials. The eldest nodded. For the first time, something like approval touched his face. Good. We begin today. The pipe was lit. Passed to Caleb. He took it, drew smoke, tried not to cough. Passed it back. The elders smoked in turn. When the ceremony finished, the eldest stood, the others followed. Black Otter gestured for Caleb to rise. The first trial, the eldest said through Black Otter, is patience. You will help the women plant. You will use our tools, our ways. You will learn that the earth gives when asked, not when demanded. Outside, the mist had burned off. Morning sun cut through it in shafts. Women were gathering near the creek, carrying digging sticks and hide bags of seeds. Ayesha walked beside Caleb. She still hadn't spoken to him. You didn't have to agree, she said finally. Yeah, I did. Why? He didn't answer right away. Watched the women spacing themselves out along the creek bank, marking plots in the soft earth. Reckon I'm tired of running. She stopped walking. He turned to face her. Her expression was careful, guarded. This is not a small thing. 3 moons is a long time. I know. You will not be able to go home. You will stay here, in the guest lodge. You will work as we work, eat as we eat, live as we live. I understand. She studied his face. Do you? No. He pulled off his hat, ran his hand through his hair. But I'm here. I agreed, so I guess I'll figure it out. Something shifted in her eyes, not quite a smile, but close. The planting stick is difficult. It takes practice. Reckon I've got time to practice. Yes. She started walking again. You do? The women made space for them at the creek bank. An old woman with deeply lined face handed Caleb a digging stick. Smooth antler handle. Fire-hardened point, lighter than he expected. She demonstrated. Angle the stick. Push down with your foot. Twist. Pull up. Drop the seed. Cover. Move. Again. Caleb tried. The stick hit rock 2 inches down. He tried again. The point slipped sideways, nearly took off his boot toe. The children watching giggled. The old woman shook her head, showed him again, slower this time. He watched her weight shift. Her hands guide the stick, the precise twist that loosened the earth without fighting it. He tried again. Better. The stick sank 6 inches. He dropped the corn kernel in, covered it. Good, the old woman said in English, her only word. By midday his hands were blistered. His back ached. He'd planted maybe 3 rows to the women's 20. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air. His shoulders burned. Ayesha worked 2 plots over. She moved with easy rhythm, her hands quick and sure. Planting stick, seed, cover, move, again, again. She made it look simple. Around noon, the women stopped for water. Someone brought food, dried meat, ash cakes, wild onions. Caleb sat in the grass, hands shaking too much to eat at first. He flexed his fingers, felt the blisters break and sting. Ayesha sat beside him. Didn't say anything, just sat. He ate. The meat was tough but good. The ash cakes tasted like smoke and corn. The onions were sharp, made his eyes water. Your hands will harden, she said. Reckon so. In my language, the word for seed and the word for hope are the same. He looked at her. She was watching the creek, her profile sharp against the sky. That so? Yes. Sue. It means both. She turned to him. What you plant today, You do not see for many moons. You plant in faith that it will grow. I know how planting works. Do you? She stood, brushed dirt from her dress. Then you know this is not about corn. She walked back to her plot, picked up her digging stick, began again. Caleb watched her for a moment. Then he stood. His back screamed. His hands throbbed. He picked up his stick and went back to work. By evening, he'd planted 6 rows. Maybe the women had finished the entire field. Children ran between the planted rows, playing some game he didn't understand. Dogs barked. The sun dropped toward the canyon rim, turning everything gold. The old woman came to inspect his work. She knelt, dug up one of his plantings. The seed was too deep. She shook her head, replanted it correctly, moved to the next. Too shallow. She fixed that too. The third one was right. She looked up at him, nodded once. Better, she said. Caleb's hands were bleeding. The blisters had broken open and bled through. He made fists, unclenched them. Everything hurt. Black Otter appeared with a clay bowl. For your hands. Ayasha made it. The same salve as last night. Caleb took it, nodded thanks. That evening he ate with the tribe. Not in the guest lodge alone, but at one of the fires. Women served food. Men talked in their language. Children ran and played. Caleb sat on the edge, understanding nothing but the laughter. Ayasha brought him a wooden cup. Sage tea. It helps the muscles. Thank you. She sat beside him. Not close, but not far either. Tomorrow will be harder. Looking forward to it. She almost smiled. You are learning. Learning I'm terrible at planting. No, learning to be patient. Learning to ask instead of demand. She sipped from her own cup. Learning that some things cannot be forced. He drank the tea. It was bitter, earthy, hot. It burned going down, but settled warm in his stomach. How long were you married? He asked. 3 years. What was he like? She was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled. Someone was singing, low and rhythmic, in one of the lodges. He was kind, patient, good hunter, good husband. She paused. He's gone. That's enough to know. I'm sorry. Why you did not know him, did not cause his death. Still, can't be easy. She looked at him, really looked, eyes searching his face. You have lost someone? It wasn't a question. Caleb stared into his tea, saw Sarah's face in the dark liquid. Long time ago. But you remember? Yeah. Then you understand. She stood. Rest. Tomorrow we plant again. She walked away. Caleb watched her go, watched her disappear into her lodge. He sat there long after the fire burned low, long after the camp grew quiet and the stars came out thick and bright overhead. His hands throbbed. His back ached. His whole body felt like one big bruise. But when he finally stood and walked to the guest lodge, something had shifted. He couldn't name it, couldn't quite grasp it. Just knew that for the first time in 6 years, the silence didn't feel like freedom. It felt like loneliness, and loneliness, he was discovering, was something you could choose to leave behind. 3 weeks passed. Caleb's hands hardened. The blisters scabbed over, then calloused. His back stopped screaming every morning. He learned to angle the digging stick right, to feel when the earth was ready to receive the seed instead of fighting it. The old woman still corrected him, but less often. Sometimes she nodded. Once she said good twice in the same day. Ayasha taught him words in the evenings. Earth, sky, water, seed. The language felt strange in his mouth, consonants in places English didn't put them. He mangled most of it. She corrected patiently, repeated, made him try again. They walked by the creek sometimes after the evening meal. Not touching, just walking. She told him about the plants she gathered, which ones healed coughs, which stopped bleeding, which brought down fever. He listened, tried to remember, forgot most of it. Your grandmother, he said one evening, did the osha root help? Yes, her cough is better. Ayasha bent, picked up a smooth stone from the creek bank, turned it over in her palm. She asks about you. What does she ask? If you are kind, if you work hard, if you complain. What do you tell her? She threw the stone. It skipped 3 times before sinking. I tell her you are learning. The second trial started on the 4th week. Hunting, the eldest gave Caleb a bow ash wood. Sinew-backed, smooth from use. 6 arrows, dogwood shafts, turkey feather fletching, stone points sharp as razors. Provide meat, the eldest said through Black Otter. Use our ways, no rifle. Caleb held the bow, drew it. The pull was maybe 40 pounds, manageable. He'd hunted with a bow as a kid, before his father bought him his first rifle. That was 25 years ago. Black Otter took him out before dawn, showed him how to track reading the prints in soft earth, the broken twigs, the browse marks on the sage. They saw deer that first day, but Caleb never got close enough for a shot. The deer smelled him, heard him, saw him, gone before he could draw. Second day, same. Third day, he got a shot, 30 yards. Drew, held, released. The arrow went wide by 2 feet. The deer bolted. 4th day it rained. They stayed in camp. Caleb sat in the guest lodge, sharpening the stone points with a piece of sandstone, listening to rain drum on the buffalo hide above. 5th day dawned cold and clear. Frost whitened the grass. Caleb went alone there this time. Black Otter had shown him enough. Now it was just him and the bough and whatever patience he'd learned planting corn. He moved slow, stopped often, listened. The canyon was waking birds calling, a hawk circling high overhead, rabbits moving in the brush. His breath plumed in the cold air. He kept downwind, or tried to. The wind kept shifting. By mid-morning, he'd seen nothing. His fingers were numb from the cold. He flexed them, tucked them under his arms to warm, kept moving. The deer came out of a draw 200 yards ahead. Young buck, maybe 2 years old, good size. He was cropping at the frost-killed grass, head down, ears swiveling. Caleb froze, counted to 10, moved, froze again. The deer kept feeding, drifting closer, 150 yards, 175. A branch cracked under Caleb's boot. The deer's head came up, and Caleb stopped breathing. 30 seconds, a minute. The deer went back to feeding. 50 yards, 40. Caleb moved behind a juniper. The deer was broadside now. Clear shot if he could get 10 yards closer. He waited. His legs cramped from standing still. His arms ached from holding the bow ready. The deer moved, closer. 30 yards. Caleb drew, smooth, quiet. The buck's head came up, but he didn't bolt. Just stood there, looking toward Caleb, but not seeing him yet. Caleb aimed, held. His arms shook from the strain. He exhaled slow, released. The arrow took the deer behind the shoulder, clean. The buck jumped, ran 10 yards, stopped, stood swaying, fell. Caleb waited, counted to 100, walked forward slow. The deer didn't move. He knelt beside it, put his hand on its side, still warm. The arrow had gone through, buried itself in the earth beyond. Black Otter had taught him the words. Caleb spoke them, halting, probably wrong, thanking the deer, thanking the earth. His father would have called this heathen practice, but Caleb had seen enough to know that gratitude was gratitude. No matter the words used, thanks given to the Creator. Whether a man called him God or the great mystery was still a prayer. He pulled the tobacco pouch from his pocket. Ayasha had given it to him the night before. Hadn't said why and scattered some over the deer. Field dressing took an hour. His hands were slick with blood by the time he finished. The bone knife Black Otter had loaned him was sharp, made the work easier. He carried the deer over his shoulders, headed back toward camp. The tribe was waiting. Someone had seen him coming. Women took the deer, began the butchering. Men nodded. Children pointed, whispered. The eldest walked up, looked at the deer, looked at Caleb. "Good," he said in English. First English word Caleb had heard from him. That night they feasted. His meat, shared among 40 people, roasted over fires, boiled in clay pots with wild onions and prairie turnips. Everyone ate. He sat by the central fire, was offered the choice cuts, took them, ate. The meat tasted better than anything he'd had in years. Ayasha sat beside him, closer than usual. "You did well." "Got lucky." "No. You learned patience. You learned to move with the land instead of against it." She handed him a wooden cup. Sage tea, still hot. "That is not luck." He drank. The tea burned, going down. Settled warm. How much longer? 2 more moons, as maybe less if the elders are satisfied. She paused. "Are you eager to leave?" He looked at her. She was watching the fire, profile sharp in the flickering light. "No," he said. "Not eager." She turned, met his eyes, held them. "Good." Later, walking back to the guest lodge, he saw them. 2 riders on the canyon rim, silhouetted against the stars. Too far to make out faces, but the shapes were wrong. White men, hats, not braids. They sat their horses, watching the camp, then turned and rode west, toward his ranch. Caleb's stomach dropped. He walked faster, found Black Otter by his lodge. There were riders on the rim. 2 men, white. Black Otter's face didn't change. "We saw them. They're headed toward my place. Yes, I need to—" "You need to stay here." Black Otter's voice was flat. "The elders will discuss it in the morning. By morning, they'll have found my ranch. They'll know I'm not there. They'll come looking. Then they will find you here, and we will speak with them." Black Otter put his hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Sleep. We will handle this." Caleb didn't sleep. He lay on the buffalo robe staring up at the smoke hole, listening to the night sounds. Dogs barking, the creek running, his pulse in his ears. Bounty hunters. Had to be. Someone had finally put it together, spent 6 years checking every land office record in 3 territories, until they found a deed signed the same week Caleb Stone vanished from Silver City. Probably checked the land office. Found the deed in his name, rode out to ask questions, found an empty ranch, tracked him here, How much was the reward now? $500, $1,000, enough to make men ride 300 miles into the territories. He could leave, right now, take his horse and ride. North, maybe, or south, into Mexico. Disappear again, build another ranch. Live alone, die alone, the old pattern, the old life. His hands curled into fists, the calluses pulled tight. He'd earned those calluses, planting corn, learning patience, learning that the earth gave when you asked instead of demanded. He stood, paced the small lodge. 3 steps one way, 3 back. His rifle leaned against the wall where he'd left it. He picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. The hide flap lifted. Ayasha stepped in and wore a blanket wrapped around her shoulders against the night cold. "You should not be here," Caleb said. "I know." She sat on the buffalo robes. "You are thinking of leaving. They're bounty hunters." "Probably. They're looking for me." "Yes. If I stay, I bring trouble to your people. If you leave, you prove the elders right, that you are a man who helps only when it costs nothing." Her voice was steady, but her hands were tight in her lap. "That you run when it gets hard. This isn't about running. This is about keeping you safe. I am not asking for your protection. I am asking for your courage." She looked up at him. "Face them. Face what you did. Stop hiding. You don't understand. I understand you killed a man. I understand you ran. I understand you have been alone ever since." She stood, moved closer. "What I do not understand is why you think running again will be different this time. They could hang me. They could. Or they could hear the truth." She paused. "You told the elders you would not dishonor me. You gave your word. I meant it. Then keep it. Stay. Face them." He stared at her. Her eyes were black in the dim light, unreadable. "Why does this matter to you?" "Because I am tired of being alone, too." The words hung between them. Outside, a dog barked. Another answered. The creek kept running, same as always. "What did I do?" Caleb asked. "What did I really do?" "You helped a lost woman. You stayed when you could have left. You learned when you could have refused." She reached up, touched his face. Her hand was warm. "You began to live again." Her hand dropped. She turned toward the entrance. "The men who are coming," Caleb said. "What will the elders do? Invite them to council. Offer food. Hear their claim." She looked back. "And let you speak your truth. What if the truth isn't enough? Then we will know you tried." She pushed aside the hide flap. "That is more than running." She left. Caleb stood there in the empty lodge, rifle in his hands, heart hammering against his ribs. Through the hide walls he could hear the camp settling down for the night. Fires dying, voices fading, the endless sound of the creek. He set the rifle back against the wall, sat on the buffalo robes, put his head in his hands. 6 years he'd been running, 6 years alone, 6 years telling himself it was better this way, safer, simpler, 6 years lying to himself. His hands smelled like pine salve and smoke and the metallic tang of the deer's blood he'd spilled today. The blood of providing, not taking, not running, providing. He lay back, closed his eyes, Sleep still wouldn't come, but he didn't get up, didn't pace. Just lay there listening to the creek and the night and the sound of his own breathing. When dawn came gray and cold through the smoke hole, he was still awake. He stood, pulled on his boots, settled his hat, walked out into the morning. The camp was stirring, smoke rising from morning fires, women bringing water from the creek, children emerging sleepy-eyed from their lodges. Black Otter was waiting. They're here? Caleb looked toward the eastern edge of camp. 2 men on horseback, trail-dusty, hard-faced but not cruel-faced. Professional men, the kind who did a job but didn't love the killing. Their horses were lathered from riding. One man had a Winchester across his saddle. The other had his hand resting easy near his pistol. The eldest emerged from the council lodge. He walked toward the strangers, calm, unhurried. He raised his hand in greeting. The man with the Winchester nodded back, said something. His voice carried across the camp, but Caleb couldn't make out the words. Black Otter appeared at Caleb's side. They are asking for you, by name. I know. The eldest invites them to meet at council. They must eat first. That is our law. And then we talk. Then you talk. Black Otter looked at him. Then we see what kind of justice white men bring. Caleb's hand wanted to reach for his rifle. He kept it at his side. Where's Ayasha? In her lodge. The elders do not want her present yet. Why not? Because if this goes bad, they do not want her connected to you more than she already is. The words hit like a fist. Caleb's throat tightened. I should go to her. No, you should go to council. The elders are waiting. Caleb looked at the bounty hunters, looked at the council lodge, looked at Ayasha's lodge, hide flap closed. No smoke rising yet from her morning fire. He thought about the wanted poster in his saddlebag. His own face, drawn crude but recognizable, wanted for questioning. That was 6 years ago. By now it probably said wanted for murder. He thought about the Marshal Hendricks was his name, drunk and mean. Fists and boots on a child small enough to fit in a flour sack. He thought about Sarah, crying when he'd walked away. He thought about 6 years of empty silence and coffee, drunk alone and fence lines that kept nothing out because there was nothing left inside to protect. He walked toward the council lodge. Black Otter followed. The bounty hunters dismounted. One of them saw Caleb coming, and his hand moved to his pistol grip. The eldest stepped between them, said something sharp. The bounty hunter's hand moved away from his gun, but his eyes stayed on Caleb. Cold eyes, professional eyes, eyes that had seen wanted posters before and knew what they meant. Caleb kept walking. His hands hung loose at his sides. His heart hammered, but his breathing stayed even. 20 feet. 10. 5. The bounty hunter with the Winchester spoke. You, Caleb Stone. Yeah. You're a hard man to find. Wasn't trying to be found. The eldest gestured toward the council lodge. Spoke through Black Otter. We will eat. Then we will talk. The bounty hunters looked at each other. The one with the Winchester shrugged. Fair enough. They followed the eldest into the lodge. Caleb came last. The hide flap fell shut behind him, cutting off the morning light. Inside, the council fire burned low. The 4 elders sat in their places. Food had been laid out, venison from yesterday's hunt, ash cakes, berries, sage tea. The pipe lay on its buffalo robe. The bounty hunters sat where they were directed. They kept their rifles but laid them across their laps, not pointed at anyone. The eldest offered food, and they took it, ate, not relaxed, but not hostile either. When the meal finished, the eldest lit the pipe, smoked, passed it. The bounty hunters hesitated, but took it, drew smoke, passed it back. The ceremony bound them. By tribal law, no violence while bread and smoke had been shared. The eldest spoke. Black Otter translated. "You seek this man of our." The bounty hunter with the Winchester answered. His voice was rough, worn down by years of trail dust and hard weather. "He's wanted for questioning in the death of a U.S. Marshal. Territorial investigation. Been open 6 years. What is his crink? Killed Marshal Hendricks outside the Lucky Dollar Saloon in Silver City, June of 1874. Witnesses say it was a fight. Hendricks drew first, but Stone finished it." "Why did they fight?" The bounty hunter looked at Caleb. "That's what the investigation wants to know." The eldest turned to Caleb. "Speak." Caleb's mouth was dry. He drank sage tea, buying time, set the cup down. His hands were steady, but inside everything was shaking. "I killed him," Caleb said. "Marshal Hendricks, I killed him, and I ran." The bounty hunter nodded, like he'd expected nothing else. "But you should know why," Caleb continued. His voice came out stronger than he'd thought it would. "You should know what he was doing when I stopped him." "Go on." "There was a Cheyenne girl, 8 years old, outside the saloon. Hendricks was drunk. He was beating her. Fists, boots. She was crying. Nobody was stopping him." The bounty hunter's eyes flickered. Something changed in his face. Not much, just a tightening around the mouth. "I told him to stop. He told me to mind my business. Called her—" Caleb stopped. "Called her something I won't repeat. I pulled him off her. He went for his gun. I went for mine. He cleared leather first, but I was faster." "You shot him?" "Yes." "Where?" "Chest, once." "He went down. Didn't get up." The bounty hunter was quiet. The council fire crackled. Outside, the camp sounds continued, children playing, dogs barking, the creek running. "The girl," the bounty hunter said. "What happened to her?" "Doctor tended her. Broken arm, bruises. But she lived." Caleb looked at his hands. At the calluses he'd earned planting corn. "She lived because Hendricks died." The eldest spoke. Black Otter translated, "We know about white lawmen who hurt our people. We know about men who call law justice when it is only power." The second bounty hunter, the quiet one, finally spoke. "You got witnesses to this." "I kept letters," Caleb said. "From townspeople. The storekeeper, the doctor, the minister, all saying Hendricks was brutal. All saying the girl didn't deserve what he did." "Where are these letters?" "My ranch. Hidden. I'll get them if you need them." The bounty hunters looked at each other. Something passed between them. An understanding. A decision being made without words. The one with the Winchester stood. "We're going to need to confer. Outside." The eldest nodded. The bounty hunters left the lodge. The hide flap fell closed behind them. Silence. Caleb sat there, hands on his knees, breathing, just breathing. One breath, another. His heart wouldn't slow down. Black Otter leaned close. "You spoke well. Will it matter?" "We will know soon." Time stretched. 5 minutes. 10. Caleb heard voices outside low, discussing, the bounty hunters conferring, making up their minds. The hide flap opened. They came back in, sat. The one with the Winchester looked at Caleb for a long moment. His face gave nothing away. Then, "I got a daughter, 12 years old, back in Kansas." Caleb waited. "If some drunk bastard laid hands on her the way you're describing, and another man stopped him." The bounty hunter's jaw tightened. "I'd call that man a hero, not a criminal." He looked at his partner. The quiet one nodded. "We rode 300 miles for nothing." The bounty hunter said, "We're done here." Caleb's breath came out in a rush. "What?" "Report's going to say Caleb Stone died of fever in the territory. Body not recovered. Investigation closed." The bounty hunter stood. "You stay gone, we stay gone. That's the deal." "Why?" "Because I still believe in justice. And what happened in that saloon, that was justice." He picked up his rifle. Law and justice aren't always the same thing. Took me 20 years to figure that out. The elders stood. The pipe was offered again, smoked again. The bounty hunters accepted it. Bound by ceremony now, bound by honor, when they left. The eldest walked them to their horses, spoke to them in halting English. "You are welcome here. If you need food, rest. You are welcome." The bounty hunter nodded. Appreciated. He mounted. His partner did the same. They turned their horses north and rode out slow, not looking back. Caleb stood outside the council lodge watching them disappear into the canyon. His legs felt weak. His hands were shaking now, tremors running through his fingers. Black Otter gripped his shoulder. "You are free." "Yeah. Why do you not look free?" Caleb stared at the empty canyon where the bounty hunters had vanished. "Because I just realized something." "What?" "I can never go home. My ranch, my land, everything I built there, it's gone. If I go back, someone else will come looking eventually. Someone who won't believe the fever story. So you will stay here?" It wasn't a question. Caleb turned to look at him. "The trials aren't finished." "No. One more remains." Black Otter smiled. "Small, rare. The hardest one." "What is it?" "You will see tomorrow." He paused. "But today, rest. You have earned it." Black Otter walked away, leaving Caleb standing alone in the morning sun. The camp had returned to normal. Women working, children playing, life continuing like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Caleb felt it in his bones. He was free, and he had nowhere to go. The hide flap of Ayesha's lodge lifted. She stepped out, saw him, stopped. They looked at each other across the camp. 40 feet of packed earth and morning light between them. She started walking toward him. He walked toward her. They met in the middle. "You stayed," she said. "Yeah." "And they left." "Yeah." "What did they say?" "That justice and law aren't the same thing." He looked at her. And that I'm free to stay gone." "So you are free?" "From them." "Yeah. But not from the trials." "No." He wanted to touch her. Didn't. "Black Otter says 1 ma. "Yes." "The vision fast." She paused. "You will sit alone on the hill. 1 day, 1 night. No food, no water. Just you and your thoughts. That's it. That is everything." She looked at him steady, direct. "You must face yourself. All of yourself. The good, the bad, the parts you ran from. And decide if you can live with what you see." Caleb's throat tightened. "And if I can't, then you know the truth." The sweat lodge stood at the canyon's edge, away from the main camp. Willow frame bent into a dome, covered with buffalo hides and old blankets. A fire pit beside it held stones the size of a man's head, glowing red from hours in the coals. Black Otter used a forked stick to roll the stones into the lodge's central pit. Steam hissed when he poured water over them. The air inside turned thick, choking. Caleb sat naked except for a breechcloth, sweat already running down his ribs. "Breathe slow," Black Otter said. "Let the heat take what needs taking." He poured more water. The steam scalded Caleb's throat. His lungs burned. Sweat poured off him in rivers, puddled on the earth beneath him. The heat was unbearable. Then worse than unbearable. Then he stopped noticing and just endured. Time disappeared. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. The stones glowed in the dark. Black Otter sang something low and rhythmic. Caleb closed his eyes, saw red behind his lids, saw faces. Sarah, the Cheyenne girl, Small Bird. Someone had told him her name was Small Bird. Hendricks on the ground, blood spreading across his shirt. "Enough," Black Otter said, and they crawled out. The morning air hit like ice water. Caleb stood on shaking legs. His head spun. Black Otter handed him a blanket. "Drink nothing. Eat nothing. Go to the hill. Stay until dawn tomorrow. That's it. That is everything." Black Otter pointed east. "The high place, and you will know it." Caleb walked. His legs felt hollow. The blanket was all he had, no food, no water, no weapon. Just the wool against his skin, and the earth under his bare feet. The path climbed, steep, rocky. His feet found thorns, sharp stones. He didn't slow. The sun climbed with him. By noon it was overhead, merciless. His throat was dust. His lips cracked. The blanket soaked through with sweat, then dried, then soaked again. The high place was a flat shelf of red rock jutting from the canyon wall, big enough for a man to sit. Nothing else. No shade, no shelter, just rock and sky and the drop-off where the canyon fell away 300 feet to the bottom. Caleb sat, wrapped the blanket around his shoulders. The sun beat down. He closed his eyes against the glare. Thirst came first. His tongue swelled, his throat closed. He tried to work up spit, but there was nothing. The sun kept beating. Sweat stopped. That was worse. His skin felt like paper. He thought about the creek, cold water running over smooth stones. He could taste it, metal and earth and cold. He opened his eyes. The sun had moved 2 fingers' width, maybe 3. His shadow stretched long across the rock. Sarah's face swam up. Not the crying. Before that, when he'd asked her to marry him. She'd said yes without hesitating, smiled like sunrise, kissed him in front of the whole church social. Then he'd told her what his job was, what it would mean, the danger, the moving, the never knowing. She'd still said yes. He'd walked away anyway, because he was afraid. Simple as that. Afraid she'd see what the job was making him. Afraid she'd see him move those families, those children. Afraid she'd know he was just following orders, and that following orders meant he was a coward who wouldn't stand up for what was right. His hands curled into fists. The calluses pulled tight. Those were new, earned. Everything before them was old, dead. No, Not dead. Still there. Still part of him. The part that ran. The part that chose safety over staying. The part that built walls and called them freedom. The sun touched the western rim. Red light spilled across the canyon. Then shadow came, fast and cold. Caleb pulled the blanket tighter. His teeth started chattering. Night fell like a hammer. The stars came out thick and bright and utterly indifferent. The cold sank into his bones. He tried to sleep. Couldn't. His body hurt everywhere, feet cut and bleeding, throat raw, head pounding from dehydration. He stood, paced the rock shelf. 5 steps one way, 5 back. His feet left dark prints. Blood. He didn't stop. The Cheyenne families rose up. Not one, all of them. Every family he'd moved in 3 years as a territorial lawman. Men with dead eyes, women crying silent, children too scared to make noise. He told himself it was the law. It was his job. He was just doing what he was told. Lies. All lies. The law was what powerful men said it was. His job was being their hand. And doing what he was told meant he never had to think about whether it was right. He stopped pacing. Stood at the edge of the drop-off, 300 feet of empty air, the canyon bottom lost in darkness. Easy to step off, easy to fall, easy to stop. No, he said out loud. His voice came out cracked, broken. No. He sat down hard, put his head in his hands. His whole body shook, not from cold, from something deeper. Shame. That's what this was. Not guilt, not regret. Shame. The bone-deep knowledge that he'd spent 10 years being a coward and calling it duty, that he'd hurt people and told himself it wasn't his fault because he was following orders, that when he'd finally done the right thing, stopped Hendricks. Saved Small Bird, he'd run instead of facing what came after. Run and kept running. 6 years. Built a ranch and called it a new start. But it was just another kind of running. Alone meant safe. Safe meant nothing could touch him. Nothing could make him face what he'd done. The stars wheeled overhead. The cold deepened. His feet throbbed. His throat felt like ground glass. But he sat there and let it come. All of it. Every family. Every child. Every moment he'd looked away and told himself it wasn't his responsibility. Sarah deserved better. She'd said yes to a coward and didn't even know it. Small Bird deserved better. She got saved by a man who ran away after. Ayasha deserved better. She was falling for someone who'd probably run again when things got hard. The thought stopped him cold. Was that true? Would he run from her? He looked at his hands, at the calluses, at the cuts from the planting stick that had healed into hard skin, at the blood on his palms from pacing on cut feet. These were new, earned by staying, by learning, by doing the work even when it hurt. The old Caleb would have ridden out the night the bounty hunters appeared, would have been gone before dawn, would have told himself he was protecting Ayasha, protecting the tribe, protecting everyone, but what he really meant was protecting himself. But he'd stayed, faced them, told the truth. And the truth had been enough. The thought settled into him like warmth, not comfort, just truth, simple and clean and hard. He didn't have to be perfect, didn't have to fix everything he'd broken. Couldn't undo the past or unmake the choices or wash the blood off his hands. But he could choose different today, tomorrow, every day after. He could stay, The word echoed in his mind. Stay. Not run, not hide, not build walls and call them strength. Stay. Be present. Be honest. Be willing to face the hard things instead of running from them. Be willing to love and risk and hurt and stay anyway. The stars began to fade. The eastern sky went from black to gray. Dawn was coming. Caleb's body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. His throat was raw. His head pounded. He couldn't feel his feet. He stood, wrapped the blanket around his shoulders, watched the light grow. By the time the sun broke the horizon, he knew, not in his head, in his bones, in the calluses on his hands and the cuts on his feet, and the rawness in his throat. He was done running. Below, the camp was waking, smoke rising from morning fires, figures moving between the lodges, small, distant, real. Caleb started down the path. Each step sent pain shooting through his cut feet. He didn't slow. The blanket slipped off his shoulders. He left it, kept walking. Halfway down, Black Otter appeared on the trail. He carried a water skin and a piece of cloth. Stopped when he saw Caleb's face. "You saw," Black Otter said, not a question. "Yeah." And Caleb took the water skin. He lifted it to his lips. Sipped. The water burned. He forced himself to go slow, small sips, letting his throat remember how to swallow. When he'd had enough, he lowered it. "I'm done running," he said. Black Otter nodded, handed him the cloth. "For your feet." Caleb sat, wrapped his feet. The cloth was soft, smelled like sage. When he stood, Black Otter gripped his shoulder. "The elders are waiting. The final ceremony. Now, yes, while you are still raw, still open." Black Otter started down the path. "Come." The camp had gathered. Everyone, men, women, children. They formed a circle around the central fire. The elders sat in their places. Ayasha stood to one side, hands folded, face composed. Caleb walked into the circle. The crowd parted. He could feel their eyes, judging, measuring. Seeing him raw and broken and still walking, the elders stood. He held a blanket red and black pattern, trade wool. New, he held a beaded belt geometric design, white and blue on hide. The work of many hours. "Ayasha made this," the eldest said, through Black Otter. "Through your trials. She did not know if you would complete them. She made it anyway." Ayasha stepped forward, took the belt from the eldest. Her hands shook slightly. She walked to Caleb, stopped in front of him. "This is for you," she said. "If you will take it." "What does it mean?" His voice came out rough, barely more than a whisper. "It means you are bound, not as owner and owned, as partners." She looked up at him. "As husband and wife, if you choose it." The circle was silent. The fire crackled. Somewhere a baby cried and was hushed. Caleb looked at the belt, at her hands holding it, at her face, careful and guarded and hopeful all at once. He'd spent 10 years running from this, from connection, from risk, from the possibility of loss. He could still run, say no, walk away, go back to his ranch or find a new one, live alone, die alone, safe, or he could stay. His hands shook when he reached for the belt. Ayasha's eyes went wide. She placed it in his palms. The beadwork was smooth, intricate. Hours of work. Days. She'd made this not knowing if he'd stay. Made it anyway. Made it in faith. "I choose it," Caleb said. The crowd murmured. The elders nodded. The eldest stepped forward with his blanket, draped it over Caleb's shoulders, spoke words in his language. Black Otter didn't translate. Didn't need to. The meaning was clear. Welcome. Belonging. Home. Ayasha took Caleb's hand. Her fingers were small but strong. She led him to the place beside the fire. They sat together, not touching except for their hands. That was enough. The pipe was lit. Passed. Smoked. The ceremony continued around them, singing, drumming, the elders speaking. Caleb understood none of it, and all of it at once. When it finished, the crowd dispersed. Back to their lodges, their work, their lives. The elders left. The fire burned low. Ayasha and Caleb sat there as the sun climbed higher. She still held his hand. "Your feet are bleeding," she said. "Yeah." "You need rest." "Yeah." She stood, pulled him up, led him toward her lodge, not the guest lodge, hers, the one she'd lived in alone since her husband died, the one that would now be theirs. At the entrance, she stopped, looked back at him. "Are you afraid, terrified?" he said. "Truth, simple, clean." "Good." She smiled, small, real. "So am I." She pushed aside the hide flap. He followed her inside. The lodge smelled like smoke and sage and something sweet he couldn't name. Her things, her gathering bag, her grinding stone, her blankets. Space for his things now, too. She pointed to the buffalo robes. "Sit. I will tend your feet." He sat. She knelt in front of him. Unwrapped the cloth. Her face didn't change when she saw the cuts, the blood, the torn skin. "This will hurt," she said. "I know." She had a clay bowl of water, clean cloth, the same salve she'd used on his hands weeks ago. She washed his feet. Each touch sent pain shooting up his legs. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. When she finished, she wrapped them in fresh cloth, sat back on her heels. "The vision fast breaks men sometimes," she said. "They see themselves and cannot bear it. I saw, and I'm still here." She reached up, touched his face. Her hand was warm, steady. "Yes, you are." She leaned forward, kissed him, soft, brief, then pulled back. Caleb's breath caught. His heart hammered. 6 years since he'd been this close to anyone. 6 years since he'd let anyone see him. Really see him. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Neither do I." She smiled. "We will learn together." She stood, moved to her side of the lodge, began preparing the evening meal. Simple, domestic, real. Caleb sat there watching her. His feet throbbed. His body ached. His throat was still raw. But for the first time in 10 years, maybe longer, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not running, not hiding, not building walls. Just here, present, alive, home. 3 months passed since the trials began. The seasons turned. The corn they'd planted in early spring broke through the earth, small green shoots that thickened into stalks, then grew tall enough to provide shade. The beans climbed the corn. The squash spread between them. The three sisters, the old woman called them, growing together, supporting each other. Caleb's feet healed. The cuts scabbed over, then calloused. He learned to walk barefoot on stone without flinching. Learned which plants to avoid, which ones to harvest. Learned the rhythm of the camp, when to work, when to rest, when to stay silent, and when to speak. His ranch sold through an intermediary. A banker in town Caleb had known. A man who asked no questions when Caleb sent word through Black Otter. The deed transferred to a settler family from Kansas. 160 acres, proved up and improved. The money, $1,800, came back in gold coins wrapped in oilcloth. Caleb gave it to the elders. The eldest looked at the coins for a long time, picked one up, tested its weight, set it down. This is much. It's for the tribe. Communal good, whatever you need. Why? Because I don't need it anymore. Caleb met his eyes. And because you took me in when you didn't have to. The eldest was quiet. Then he nodded. We will use it well. The money bought winter supplies, flour, sugar, coffee, bolts of cloth. Things the tribe could trade for but rarely had enough of. The women were grateful. The men nodded their approval. Caleb said nothing. Just helped unload the wagons when they came. He built a cabin with help from the tribe's men. Black Otter showed him the notching. The young men helped fell and drag the logs. The women showed him how to mix mortar for the fireplace. It took 6 weeks of shared work. 1 room, log construction, hand-hewn, no nails, everything fitted and notched. The roof was split shingles, overlapped to shed rain, a stone fireplace, carefully mortared. 1 window frame facing east, covered with oiled hide that let in light but kept out wind. Ayasha watched him work, brought water when the sun was high, brought food at midday, didn't offer advice unless he asked. He asked often. The door frame is crooked, she said one afternoon. Caleb stepped back, looked. She was right. How much? Enough that winter wind will come through. He took it apart, started over. Got it right the second time. When the cabin was finished, they moved Ayasha's things in. Her gathering bag, her grinding stone, her clay pots and wooden bowls, her blankets. The beaded belt she'd made hung on the wall beside the door. His rifle stood in the corner, unloaded. He hadn't fired it in 3 months. They lived simply, rose at dawn. Caleb learned to help with the grinding corn into meal, a rhythm that made his shoulders ache until they didn't. Learned to prepare hides, scraping them clean with a bone tool, working in the brain matter that made them soft. His hands cramped for days until they learned the motion. Ayasha taught him plants, which roots to dig in spring, which in fall, which leaves to dry for tea, which to make into poultices. Osha root for coughs, yarrow to stop bleeding, wild tobacco for ceremony. She tested him, pointing to plants along the creek bank. This one, sage, and this, He knelt, smelled it. Wild onion. Yes, you are learning. He taught English to the children who wanted it. Not missionary work, the tribe had their own language, their own ways, just offering. 3 children came the first day, 5 the second. By the end of the first week, 10. They sat in a circle outside his cabin. He taught them letters scratched in the dirt with a stick, taught them words, book, sky, horse, river. They giggled when he tried to pronounce their language. He exaggerated his mistakes on purpose to make them laugh more. One boy, maybe 8 years old, asked, "Why do white men have so many words for bad?" Caleb thought about it. "Reckon we need them." "Why?" "Because we do a lot of bad things." The children went quiet. Then the boy nodded, serious. "My father says the same." In the evenings, Caleb and Ayasha sat by their fire. She was teaching him her language properly now. Not just plants and tools, but conversation. How to speak with elders. How to address women respectfully. How to tell stories. He was terrible at it. "No," she said, laughing. "You just told the council that your horse is pregnant with the moon. That's not what I—" He stopped. "What did I actually say?" She repeated it. He heard the mistake. "Wrong word. Changed the whole meaning." "Try again," she said. He tried. "Got it wrong differently." She corrected. He tried once more. "Better. Not right, but closer." "You will speak properly by winter," she said. "Doubtful. You learned the bow. You learned the planting. You will learn this." She had faith in him. It was strange, uncomfortable. "Good." One night she asked, "Do you miss it? Your old life?" Caleb poked the fire with a stick. Sparks rose, disappeared into the dark. "Sometimes I miss the quiet. It is quiet here. Different quiet. That was empty quiet. This is—" He searched for the word. "Full quiet." She nodded. Understood without him explaining. That was new, too. Being understood. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Staying." He looked at her. Firelight caught her face. Left her eyes in shadow. "No. Not even a little. Not even a little." She smiled, reached over, took his hand. They sat like that until the fire burned low and the stars came out thick and bright overhead. The bounty hunters kept their word. No one came looking, no riders on the horizon, no wanted posters, just silence. The good kind. Caleb's past wasn't gone. He still saw the faces, sometimes the families he'd moved, the children crying, Hendrix bleeding out in the dust. But the seeing didn't own him anymore. It was just memory. Painful. True. Not something to run from. He learned to cook. Ayasha showed him how to make stew in the clay pot, how to make ash cakes that didn't taste like charcoal, how to brew sage tea without making it bitter. He still burned things. She didn't complain, just scraped off the worst of it and ate anyway. "You will improve," she said. "When, eventually," but she smiled when she said it. Summer came hot and dry. The corn grew tall. They helped with the harvest in midsummer, learning to know when the corn was ready by feel, when the squash was ripe by sound. His back didn't ache anymore during the long days of work. His hands were hard as leather. By late summer, he could speak enough of the language to have simple conversations, though he still mangled the complicated words. He caught most of the simple words now. The formal old words the elders used still escaped him, but enough. He understood enough. The children still laughed. He didn't mind. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in October, light flakes that melted on contact but left the morning air sharp enough to sting. Caleb woke in the dark, felt Ayasha's warmth beside him under the buffalo robes. The cabin held heat well. The stone fireplace he'd built drew properly, kept the single room warm through the night. He slipped out of bed, pulled on his clothes in the dark. The floor was cold under his bare feet, but he didn't flinch. His feet had calloused thick over the months. He could walk on frozen ground without noticing. Outside, the camp was waking, mogia rising from lodges, the creek running loud from yesterday's rain. Not frozen yet, but would be soon. Dogs nosing around the fire pits looking for scraps. Black Otter emerged from his lodge, saw Caleb, nodded. They'd developed a morning routine checking the horse pen together, making sure none had gotten out during the night, that the water trough hadn't frozen. Cold coming, Black Otter said. Yeah. The elders say hard winter. Long. Caleb looked at the sky. Gray, heavy. They usually write impelus. The horses were fine. Water trough full. A hay scattered from last night's feeding. They headed back toward camp. Ayasha's grandmother wanted to see him that morning. The old woman's lodge sat at the camp's south edge. Smoke rose from her fire. Caleb pushed aside the hide flap. The interior was warm, smoky. She sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets despite the heat. Her face was carved deep with lines, her eyes clouded with age but still sharp. She spoke. Caleb caught maybe half of it, the simple words, the familiar phrases, the complex parts, the formal old words. Those still escaped him, but enough. He understood enough. Ayasha translated what he missed. She says you have learned much. Still learning. The old woman waved her hand, dismissive, spoke more. She says learning never stops. That is not the point. Ayasha paused. She wants to know if you are happy. Caleb looked at the old woman. Her eyes held his, waiting. Yes, he said in her language. I am happy. She nodded, said something else. Longer this time. Her voice was weak but steady. Her cough, despite the osha root, had grown worse over the months. Ayasha's voice was soft. She says her granddaughter was alone for 3 years. She worried Ayasha would be alone forever. She thanks you for staying, for choosing her granddaughter when you could have chosen to leave. The old woman reached out, took Caleb's hand. Her grip was weak but firm. She squeezed once, let go, spoke one more sentence. She gives you her blessing, Ayasha said quietly. She wanted you to know before winter comes. Before she... Ayasha stopped. Before spring, Caleb nodded. Thank you, he said in the old woman's language. She smiled, waved them away. Outside, snow was falling harder, big flakes that stuck to the ground this time. Caleb looked at Ayasha. She's dying, he said. Yes. Before spring, Ayasha's voice was steady, but her hands were tight in her shawl. She wanted to see you, to know you would take care of me. I will. I know. She took his hand. Come, we have work to do before the snow gets deep. The children still came for English lessons, despite the snow. They sat in the cabin this time, crowded around the fire. Caleb taught them to write their names. The letters looked strange, foreign. They practiced on pieces of bark with charcoal. One girl, maybe 10, looked up. Will you teach us to read books? Don't have any books, Caleb said. You could get some in town. He paused. Hadn't been to town in months. Hadn't thought about it. Maybe in spring. Will you still be here in spring? The question hung in the air. All the children watching him, waiting. Yeah, Caleb said. I'll be here. The girl smiled, went back to practicing her letters. That evening, Ayasha made stew, venison, wild onions, prairie turnips. Caleb made ash cakes that only burned a little. They ate sitting by the fire, shoulders touching. The children like you, she said. They like learning? No, they like you. She set down her bowl. You are patient, kind. You do not treat them like they are less. Why would I? Many white men do. Caleb was quiet. Thought about the families he'd moved, the children crying, the things he'd told himself to make it easier. I used to, he said. I know. She took his hand. But you do not now. That is what matters. They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Outside, wind picked up. The first real storm of winter coming. Tell me about your wife, Caleb said. First time he had asked directly. Ayasha was quiet for a long moment. His name was Running Elk. He was kind, patient, good hunter. She paused. He loved me. I loved him. We were happy. Do you still love him? Part of me always will. The part that remembers. But he is gone. You are here. She looked at him. I love you differently, not less. Just different. How? She thought about it. With him. I was young. Everything was new. With you. I am older. I know what loss means. What staying means. I love you knowing you could leave. And you love me knowing I could send you away. We choose each other daily. That is stronger than young love that does not know doubt. Caleb pulled her close. She fit against him perfect. I'm not leaving. I know. Man who stayed. She smiled against his shoulder. Terrible at making ash cakes. But he stays. They're getting better. No, they are not. He laughed. She laughed. The sound filled the small cabin, warm and real and alive. The storm hit after midnight. Wind screaming through the canyon, snow piling against the cabin walls. The fire burned low. Caleb got up, added wood, stoked it back to life. Ayasha slept through it. He stood by the window, watching the storm. 6 years ago, he'd been alone in his ranch. Storms like this. He'd sit by the fire and drink coffee and stare at nothing. The silence had been absolute, crushing. He'd told himself it was peace. Now, listening to Ayasha's breathing, the fire crackling, wind howling outside, this was peace, real peace. The kind that came from not being alone. By morning, the storm had passed. A foot of snow covered everything. The camp dug out slowly, children playing in the drifts, dogs bounding through snow up to their bellies. Smoke rising from every lodge. Caleb and Black Otter cleared paths between the lodges. Hard work. His back ached, but it was good pain. Work pain, earned pain. That night, Caleb told Ayasha about the school the elders had proposed. A small building near their cabin, where he could teach children who wanted to learn English. Reading, writing. She listened, nodding. This is good, she said. The children need to know both worlds. Our language, our ways, but also English, reading, writing, to protect themselves. From what? From men who would take advantage of those who cannot read contracts, cannot speak English, cannot defend themselves with white men's words. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. You know this. You were one of those men once. The truth landed solid. Yeah, I was. And now you will help prevent it. That is redemption. She took his hand. Not erasing the past. Choosing better now. They sat by the fire. Outside, the canyon slept under its blanket of snow. The creek kept running. would keep running through winter, would keep running forever. Caleb held Ayasha close, breathed in the smell of sage and smoke and the sweetness that was just her, felt her warmth, her breathing, her presence. This was home, not the ranch he'd built, not the silence he'd chosen. This woman, this tribe, this life earned through patience and work and learning to stay when every instinct screamed to run. He closed his eyes, felt peace settle into his bones. Deep, true, lasting. When he opened them, Ayasha was watching him. "I love you," he said. "I know," she smiled. Man who stayed, outside, and snow began to fall again, soft, quiet, covering everything in white, making the world new inside. The fire crackled, warm and steady and true. They sat together. Two people who'd been alone, who'd chosen each other, who'd built something real from pain and loss, and the courage to stop running. The night deepened. The fire burned. The snow fell. And Caleb's stone man who stayed was finally, fully, completely home. Winter deepened. By November, the creek froze solid enough to walk across. Snow piled hip-deep in the canyon bottoms. The tribe moved through the cold months with practiced efficiency, tending fires, mending clothes, telling stories in the lodges when darkness came early. Caleb and Ayasha's cabin became a gathering place. The children still came for lessons, crowding around the fireplace while Caleb scratched English words in the dirt floor. Book, tree, snow, wind. They repeated after him, their voices high and clear. "Again," he said, pointing to the word friend. "Friend," they said together, rolling the R too much. "Friend," he corrected. "Less rolling. Friend. Better." Ayasha sat in the corner, grinding corn, the stone making its familiar rhythm against stone. She glanced up, caught his eye, smiled. He smiled back. After the children left, she brought him sage tea. "You are good with them. They make it easy. No, you make them feel safe. That is different." She sat beside him. "The elders met this morning. They want to build the school in spring, near here. You will be the teacher." Caleb wrapped his hands around the warm cup. Official as we make things." She paused. "They trust you now. That is not small. I know." Outside, wind rattled the oiled hide covering the window. Snow hissed against the walls. The fire crackled, warm and steady. "Your grandmother," Caleb said. "How is she?" Ayasha's face tightened. "Weaker. The cough is worse despite the medicine." She stared into her tea. "She will not see spring. I'm sorry. She is ready. She told me yesterday she has lived long enough to see me happy again. That is all she wanted." Caleb reached over, took her hand. She squeezed back, hard. They sat like that until the tea grew cold and the fire needed more wood. Then they stood together. He added logs while she started preparing the evening meal. Venison stew in her clay pot, ash cakes in his iron skillet. Both pots side by side over the fire. "You are improving," she said, watching his cakes. "Liar." "Only a little," she laughed. "They are less burned than last week." "High praise." She stirred the stew, added wild onions, prairie turnips. The smell filled the cabin rich, earthy, home. He watched her work, the way her hands moved, and sure, the way her braids swung when she bent forward, the way she hummed sometimes, low and tuneless, when she was content. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Nothing. You are smiling." "Am I?" "Yes." She set down the spoon, came to him, took his face in her hands. "You do that now. Smile. You did not when you first came. Didn't have much to smile about. And now," he looked at her, really looked. "Now I do." She kissed him, soft, sweet, then went back to the stew, and they ate sitting on the buffalo robes, bowls in their laps, the fire warming their faces. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, it was quiet, full quiet. "The elders gave you a name," Ayasha said. "Did I tell you Black Otter mentioned it? Man who stayed. Do you like it?" Caleb thought about it. 6 years ago. He'd been a man who ran, who chose isolation over risk, who built walls and called them strength. Now he was man who stayed. "Yeah," he said. "I like it." "Good, because it is what they will call you, what I will call you when I am angry." "You get angry." "You will find out." She smiled. "Probably when you burn the stew." "I've never burned the stew. Yet." They laughed. The sound felt easy, natural, like breathing, after eating. They cleaned the bowls together. She washed. He dried. Another routine learned over months. Small things, simple things. Building a life together one bowl at a time. Later, lying in the dark under the buffalo robes, Caleb listened to her breathe. Even, steady, asleep. He wasn't. His mind turned over the months since he'd found her at the spring, since he'd given her a ride, since everything changed. He thought about the trials, the planting, the hunting, the vision fast, the shame he'd faced on that hilltop, the choice he'd made to stay. He thought about the bounty hunters, the council, speaking his truth, being believed. He thought about selling his ranch, giving away his money, building this cabin with tribal hands helping, teaching children, learning a new language, learning to cook, learning to be part of something instead of apart from everything. He thought about Ayasha, about the way she'd looked at him that first night, when she'd come to the guest lodge with salve for his hands, the way she'd challenged him to stay when he wanted to run, the way she'd made that beaded belt not knowing if he'd finish the trials. Faith. She'd had faith in him before he had it in himself. His throat tightened. He pressed his face into the buffalo robe, breathed deep. When had he gotten happy? Not the loud kind. Not celebration or victory, just the quiet kind. The kind that came from waking up beside someone, from teaching children their letters, from burning ash cakes and being teased about it, from speaking a language badly and being corrected with patience instead of mockery, the kind that came from belonging. He shifted closer to Ayasha. She murmured in her sleep, turned into him. Her hand found his chest, rested there. He covered it with his own. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, they were warm, safe, together, and for the first time in 10 years, maybe his whole life, Caleb Stone felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not running, not hiding, not alone, home. December came colder. The snow kept falling. Ayasha's grandmother grew weaker. They visited her daily. Caleb would sit quietly while Ayasha tended her, bringing tea, adjusting blankets, singing old songs in their language. One morning, the grandmother called for Caleb specifically. He knelt beside her bed of robes. She took his hand in both of hers, spoke in a whisper. Ayasha translated. She says you have given her granddaughter a good life. She says she can rest now, knowing Ayasha will not be alone. Caleb nodded, throat too tight to speak. The old woman squeezed his hand, spoke again. She says you were a stranger who became family. That is the best kind. Ayasha's voice wavers out. She says thank you for staying. Tell her. Caleb stopped, started again. Tell her I'm the one who should be thankful. For all of you, letting me stay, Ayasha translated. The grandmother smiled, released his hand, closed her eyes. She died 3 days later. The tribe mourned with ceremony and song. They buried her wrapped in her finest blankets, facing east toward the rising sun. Ayasha cried in Caleb's arms that night, and he held her and said nothing because there was nothing to say. Grief was grief. You walked through it. You didn't run. By January, the worst of winter had passed. The days grew longer. Though snow still fell, Caleb's language skills improved. He could hold simple conversations now without mangling every other word. The elders nodded their approval. One evening, sitting by the fire with Ayasha, he tried to tell her he loved her in her language. Got the words tangled. Ended up saying something about loving her cooking pot. She stared at him, burst out laughing. What? He said. What did I say? She told him. He groaned. He laughed harder. Try again, she said, wiping her eyes. He tried. Got it right this time, mostly. Close enough, she said. I understood. Yeah, yes. She moved closer. I love you too, even when you love my cooking pot. They sat together watching the fire burn. Outside, the wind had died. The canyon was silent. Peaceful. Are you happy? She asked. Yeah, he said. I am. When did that happen? He thought about it. Don't know exactly. Somewhere between burning ash cakes and teaching children. Somewhere between learning to plant and learning to stay. Somewhere between running and home. Yeah, somewhere between. She rested her head on his shoulder. He put his arm around her. They sat like that until the fire burned low and sleep called them to the buffalo robes. Spring would come. The school would be built. The children would learn. Life would continue. But tonight, in the quiet warmth of their cabin, with snow falling soft outside and the fire crackling inside, Caleb, stone man who stayed, was content. He'd been a lonely rancher who gave a ride to a woman in need. By custom, he'd become bound to her. By choice, he'd become her husband. By grace, he'd become himself. Not the man who ran, not the man who hid, not the man who chose isolation and called it freedom. Just a man who'd learned that home wasn't a place you were born to, or a thing you built alone. Home was people, was community, was choosing to stay even when staying was hard, was being known, truly known and loved anyway. Home was here, with her, with them, finally, fully. Home. There's something that settles in after a story like this. Not resolution exactly, more like recognition. The kind that comes when you've watched someone finally stop moving and just stand still. And you realize how tired you've been too. How long you've been carrying weight you never named. Some of us have built walls and called them something else. told ourselves that keeping distance meant keeping safe. It's a familiar ache. That one. The kind many of us know but don't speak about, the loneliness that looks like independence from the outside. The running that feels like living until one day it doesn't anymore. Caleb's story doesn't tie up neat. Ayasha's grandmother died before spring like she knew she would. The past he ran from doesn't disappear just because he stayed. The shame he felt on that hilltop that doesn't vanish either. It just becomes something he can look at without turning away. And maybe that's all any of us can do with the heavy things. Look at them. Keep walking anyway. This story doesn't need to teach you anything. It's allowed to just be what it is, one man's slow walk towards something that scared him more than being alone ever did. Whether that touches you or not, whether you see yourself in it or don't, that's all right. Thank you for staying all the way through to the quiet end.